So as the manhunt intensifies for the suspect in Charlie Kirk's murder, there are growing conversations over how the assassination will reverberate through U.S. politics.
Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated.
And we do have an update on that for you. First of all, that's FBI Special Agent Robert Bowles, who was updating reporters on the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder on Wednesday. State and federal officials, including FBI Director Kash Patel, are scheduled to have a news conference at 9 a.m. That's happening today. Meantime, analysts warning the assassination of the right-wing political activist only deepens this already divided U.S. political landscape. So for more, we have reached out to Louis Krasinski. He's in Philadelphia this morning, postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto's Department of Political Science. Louis, just before we get to our interview, I want to update everybody. U.S. President Donald Trump was just on Fox News saying about the suspect, quote, "I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody." So that is the very latest on the manhunt in the U.S. Lindsey and the news team are continuing to follow those developments. Stick with us here at Your Morning. She'll bring you those in news. In the meantime, we want to turn right now to what is happening as of this morning in the United States when we take a look at the political climate that is there right now. We have heard, there's this void of information until we actually question a suspect who we understand is probably in custody right now. And in that void, people have filled it with, well, including the president, who has said this is the responsibility of the radical left. We've had others say this is not the time for division. This is the time to take a close look at where we sit as a country. Where do Americans sit in their political divide this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the million-dollar question, right? I think there's a lot of anger out there right now. I think, unsurprisingly, both on the left and the right, there's a lot of anger in the United States. I will say that I think the majority of the country is still largely just in mourning, in grief, thinking about just what a dark political moment this is, seeing another political assassination in a country that's had far too many of them. I think there are sort of those more radical voices that are a little bit more amplified on social media than they would be otherwise. But I think generally most people are a little bit in shock, right? This is a proud democracy where voices should be expressed through ballots, not bullets. And I think people are a little bit shocked to see that this happened in their country and a once vibrant and healthy democracy that now has serious questions.
Yeah, a couple of centuries old, and we are now looking at political violence at well within the sphere of politics in the United States. You know, when we look back to the assassination attempt on the then presidential candidate Donald Trump, people were saying there is no room in America for political violence, but it seems to be part of the discourse now.
Yeah, it does. And you go back even, less time. 3 months ago, there was the assassination of the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the state of Minnesota and her husband. And each time it sort of follows a cycle of shock. How could this happen in the United States? To, some sort of introspection to look at how they can do better as a country. But then it just sort of keeps happening. I think you have to go back all the way till the 1960s to where you saw just the scale of violence and really just, how much of it was happening in a short time span.
Yeah.
The optimistic take would be that there'd be a serious conversation in this country about gun control and, that this really seems to be the core of why this happens so frequently. But I think, unfortunately, there isn't the political energy for that discussion right now.
I'm glad you brought up the area of the 1960s. A lot of analysts have drawn this comparison back to that moment in political violence. First of all, they had 1963, U.S. President John F. Kennedy assassinated in Dallas. And then in 1968, civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated in Memphis. And that same year, U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. was assassinated in L.A. Has the U.S. returned to this volatile moment?
I think in some ways it has. I think it's every political moment, every historical moment is different. I don't know how productive it is to, make the comparison and saying, oh, it's exactly like this or it's not. I think, they can be equally troubling times, and we're certainly living through one of them right now. And, the question is really what happens next. Unfortunately, violence begets more violence oftentimes, and this will sort of embolden people more on the political extremes to potentially take more action into their own hands. the hope is that sort of the better angels of this country can persevere. And, maybe this will be a turning point. Maybe this will be the point in time where people say enough is enough, and we need to get back to what it means to be a free and fair democracy. But I don't know how optimistic I am in that regard. I think, unfortunately, there's going to be tougher times ahead, too.
Well, it certainly feels like this is a change moment in U.S., not only political history, but history as a whole. Louis Krasinski, postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto's Department of Political Science. If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.